Good afternoon. I'm delighted to have the afternoon session, although be it a tough one. I'm sure you all had a nice lunch and we get to keep you entertained for the next 55 minutes, I think it is. My name is Regina Murray and I actually am not based in the UK, but I am from Ireland, as you can gather from my accent, and I cover Europe, Middle East and Africa, the higher education sector for Microsoft. And I will be joined later by my colleague Andy, who is the CTO for UK Education, and he's going to do some of the great demos that we're going to cover in this session. So I'm going to start with a book that we recently published called The Future Computed, which is really looking at the role of artificial intelligence in society. And it was written primarily to look at what's going to happen with technology, where is it going? And to think about that, I think it's interesting to look at not just where it's going, but where has it come from? And if you look back to 20 years ago, in about 1998, when all of us woke up in the morning, we were very much in an analog era. If we wanted the news while we were having our cup of coffee, we turned on the radio or we turned on the television to get that news. When we were looking to see what we were going to do with our day, we probably had a diary that we opened up or a calendar that was paper-based to look at that and see what we had going on. When we zoom to today, what's the first thing that all of us do? Well, I do anyway, but majority of people do, is pull out your phone. So we look at our phone and we use it almost like a news feed. So you might have your local newspapers online. You might look at Facebook or Twitter and see what's gone on, what's happened overnight, what do I need to be aware of. It is very much a digital world that we're living in now. And we use now, not instead of a paper-based diary or calendar, we very much use our phones for that. I don't know how I would survive with my schedule and where I'm going and where I need to be without that calendar on my device. And for a lot of us, when we think about going to work, when we think about how we're going to get there, we might try and check on an app, train times, or we might look at what traffic is like. Again, very much digital, and we've transformed. Then the question is, what's it going to look like in 20 years' time? And that's a tough question because guess what? Most of us don't know what it's going to look like, but we can take some good guesses and assumptions. And I think it's fair to say that in 20 years' time, we'll unlikely not pull out a device and look at our phones, but we'll have a digital assistant. So we may have a Cortana or some other digital assistant who, as we're getting ready, might be telling us about what meetings we've got coming up, what the weather's like, what may have happened overnight. For a meeting that we might be scheduled to attend, who's going to be there? What maybe news do we need to know before we go to that meeting? Has somebody called in sick to it? And so this is very much how we see things could transform and change in the future when it comes to digitization. And really this is the essence of, when we think about artificial intelligence, this is really the essence of how, and our vision for how we see artificial intelligence, pulling all of that information together and really amplifying human ingenuity. And the question on a lot of our minds is, and it equates, how will it impact our world? What will it look like? And what is AI? So if we take a step back, we look at, it really enables computers to perceive what's out there in the world and then to reason with it, to make decisions based on that. And one of the things as humans we do when we perceive is we see, we capture images. And computers have been able to capture images for a long time, and cameras for even longer than that. But what's different now and what's changed is the ability of computers to really have intelligence around those images, to be able to understand what's in those images. And that's becoming increasingly on a par with humans. And at Microsoft Research we see this. And then when we look at speech or hearing, when we progress to languages, that's an area where we really see that computers will almost outpace humans. So on my travels across Europe, Middle East and Africa, I often get to meet people who speak 3, 4 languages, and as an English speaker, I'm always amazed at that because they really got huge language capacity and capability. But now we've got computers that are able to understand and translate about 120 languages. So this trend is going to continue. And what's interesting then is how they will use that information, how they will reason it and translate it into knowledge. And all of these advances are really made possible by the vast amounts of computational power that we have in our data centers, paired that with the vast amounts of data that we have. And this is very exciting. If you're in the tech industry like us and you work for Microsoft, it's really exciting and it's exciting times. And a lot of our counterparts are really interested and exciting in this too, because we recognize the huge potential and power that this has to transform industries like healthcare and make huge leaps and bounds there, or agriculture, or making the world more accessible and providing tools and supports for people with disabilities, and also tackling some of the most toughest challenges we have, like climate change. And I think when we think about Microsoft's position in this, it's not to bundle up all of these, these services and use our consulting services and go out to customers and implement these solutions. It is all about making these available. So if it's a speech AI or a voice AI, it's really making those available so that our customers can use those and build their own AI tools, work with their own AI systems. And so Andy is going to join me now, and he's going to show you some of those tools, do some cool demos. Some of them I think I'll be partaking in. And then think about, when we think about our industry and the industry that we serve, education, the implications and the ability of some of these new technologies to really transform and have impact on that industry. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you, Regina. So at Microsoft, we talk about the concept of democratizing AI. But what does that really mean? Well, it means how can we use AI to empower every person and every organization in the planet? So although there's many facets of AI that I could cover today, I kind of wanted to just bring it down into 3 categories. So we have democratized AI in the sense that we have our cognitive services available in Azure. We have the bot framework. And for you guys that haven't seen it, my colleague Mark McManus, if you're in the room, wave your hand. He's there. Mark will create you a bot in 5 minutes if you just go round to the Microsoft exhibition and show you how that works. Another part of AI that we talk about at Microsoft is infused AI. And what we mean by that is it's infused in our everyday products, things that we can use in our everyday life to help us be more productive. So I'm just going to try, hopefully the demo gods are with us. Could I ask a small favor of the audience? If you're on your CISA 2018 network, could I ask you just to come off that for a few moments? Thank you. Okay, and is there a way of me just mirroring that screen? Sorry, 2 seconds. It is a live demo. And it's rather blank there. Is there a way of mirroring the screen? Actually, this will get interesting. Okay, if I do that. Okay, someone tell me if I'm new. Yeah? Okay. We all use PowerPoint. Who uses PowerPoint fairly regularly? Right, okay. If you're anything like me, you probably spend the bulk of your time in PowerPoint trying to make it look pretty, as opposed to getting on with what you really should be doing, which is creating the content, the idea for the learning. And this really hit home to me. A few weeks ago, my 11-year-old daughter, Leah, she was doing a joint project with her friends, so they're on my Surface, they've logged into Glow, the national intranet in Scotland, with Office 365. They're doing a project on Italy. Now, the idea is they're going to learn about the culture, the economy, people, places. 20 minutes later, they're still on the first slide because they're trying to make it look pretty. So, actually, if I Turn this around to me. So we now, in PowerPoint, have what is called a design assistant. So for the next two demos, I'm going to talk about intelligent assistants. So if I was doing a project on Italy, there we go, keep it nice and simple. I've put my title in. I go up to Insert, and I go to Online Pictures, and in here I'm going to write Italy, and I think there's a lovely picture there, so I'm going to use that one. I'm going to insert it. Good, you all came off the Wi-Fi, thank you. Okay, you start to see down the right-hand side here, the design assistant using machine vision is now giving me options for professional looking slides. Now, there's a lot to talk about automation, replacing jobs, and it's a very serious conversation, but it can also replace jobs in areas that I hadn't considered. When I was demonstrating this to a university, there was 3 people in the group of 12 went kind of white and quiet. And I said, why? What's wrong? Don't you think that's a cool feature? And he said, yeah, that's what we do. We create slides for academics. And I thought, okay, wow, that's interesting. So I could have that, or I could have that, or I could go for that. And I've got a professional looking slide. So if I just go to here, and go to New. Okay, let's go to Quick Start. Anyone used Quick Start before? I think you may like this as much as me. So as well as being a technologist, I'm a writer, songwriter, as it were. And I've got one of those collections of notes and different ideas that I've taken. One of the things I suffer from is blank page syndrome. I really detest starting from scratch. I like to start from a bunch of ideas and then go on to cultivate it, curate it to make it mine. So, if I was to do a talk, or I was going to give a talk, and apologies for the spelling in advance, on artificial intelligence, and let's go for the history of artificial intelligence. Okay. And I'll pick the first one. No, in fact, go for the second one. Oh, something went wrong. Everyone off that Wi-Fi, yeah? Okay, let's pick a different one. Let's pick that. Okay, so what the intelligence has done, using a sophisticated algorithm, is went out and captured a lot of relevant content for that subject and brought it together for me into this professional looking slide deck. And if you see down here, it's actually giving me prompts on what I may want to talk about on each slide. Now this isn't about the intelligence doing the work for you. That's not what this is about. The process that the intelligence is replacing is the need to go find content. And I'm not talking about replacing research either, the creation of new knowledge. I'm not talking about that. But when you think there's over 3 million times more information online than there is in every printed book ever written, then that sounds like a challenge that only a computer can help us with. And so this really gives me a great starting point. And Mark, apparently you've got a Skype meeting coming up as well on this device, which is pretty fun. Okay, one more on intelligent assistants. Okay, if I just pop that down. Okay, if I bring this over to here. In fact, I can see a potential challenge on the third demo. maybe later. Do you know what? I am just going to jump to the third demo. Unless I was going to demonstrate Resume Assistant. Who's familiar with that? You've been looking for a job recently? Yeah, so for those, we acquired LinkedIn. If you think about that just in the UK context, there are 23 million professionals using LinkedIn. What a source of knowledge that is. And so Resume Assistant, using machine learning, can actually pull in the best points, the skills, make it more relevant for the job that you're interviewing for. But because the demo gods have been reasonably kind, and I'm having this thing about a split screen, I'm going to go to the third demo. And please work. Okay. So those demos were about bringing AI to everyday life to help with things. This demonstration is about creating something completely new with AI. And I think one of the great things about AI is it can really help with inclusion, with accessibility. Who's heard of Seeing AI? Okay. I don't think we could truly democratize AI in Microsoft if we weren't cross-platform, so I'm going to use an Apple device. Oh, that's good. Okay. Seeing AI is a research project that came out of Microsoft UK. It's still ongoing. And it was developed by Sidit, who is a visually impaired Microsoft employee himself. And this app helps the visually impaired and blind make sense of the world around them. There are approximately 2 million people in the UK affected by sight loss, visually impaired. Over 60% of those people feel completely disengaged from the environment around them. So using AI, hopefully we're playing a small part in trying to help there. So Regina, could I ask you to come forward?
I hope it's kind to me.
Okay.
2 feet away. 1 face near center 3 feet away. Processing. 34-year-old woman with blonde hair looking happy.
Regina's happy with that.
Yes, let's just put it this way, I'm a little bit older than 34.
This caused a riot in my house, I can tell you. So could I have a volunteer
0
from the
faces.
audience? Just do a bit of fun. Yourself, sir? Okay.
1 face near 2 faces. 3 processing. 2 people detected. 31-year-old man with black hair wearing glasses looking happy. 40-year-old man with black hair and a beard looking neutral.
Thank you very much.
0 faces.
Okay, so we can also do things like color.
Color preview. Brown. Black and gray.
So
Brown.
some of this is still in beta.
Violet. Currency preview.
So let's try some currency. Typical Scotsman, I can't get my wallet out. It's,
£10.
I'm not going to try it with Scottish money. I already know that it's not legal tender. Okay, and then if I look at short text.
Short text. How to come up. How to come up. Come up. How to
Oh dear.
A pragmatic strategy handbook for education leaders, innovators and troublemakers. A project for education S.
Great book. How to come up with great ideas and actually implement them. Okay, final one. I was a bit short in props when I got off the plane, but I have a toothpaste, so can it recognize and tell me anything about this? Oh, have I lost? It was all going so well to Well, just so you know, I'm not making this up. What does it say there?
Colgate Total Healthy Clean Toothpaste.
There we go.
You have to repeat it.
That's Colgate Total Healthy Clean Toothpaste. So apologies that I've lost the signal on it. But that is seeing AI, and that is what we mean by democratizing AI to empower every person and organization on the planet. So with that, I'm going to stop, and I hope that was of some value to you. And let's see if I can get Regina's presentation to continue on working.
We were going to demo another one, which I'll talk to at the end, which has got huge applicability for education and indeed inclusiveness, which is Presentation Translator. The reason we're not demoing it, and I actually use it in a lot of the work that I do in Europe, Middle East and Africa, because a lot of people that I work with don't speak English as first language. And so if I'm going to Germany and I'm doing a presentation, I would automatically run this in the background where it would create subtitles in German. And one of the things that it really needs for accuracy, it's challenged with my Irish accent a little bit, but it learns through the machine learning with that, but is to have a mic and to have a headset, and I didn't request that ahead of time, so we couldn't show the full demo, but I'll show a little bit on it later. But the amount of interest in the sector for this, because there are a lot of lecturers there who you look out in an audience and you really don't know who's got hearing impairment, so maybe they just want the transcripts or the subtitles in English. Maybe you've got someone who's got English as a second language and it's really helpful for them to see the transcript at the bottom. Or maybe on their phone, what they can also do with this before you kick off a presentation is to just scan a QR code, and you can choose what language you'd like to see the subtitles in. So again, you're sitting down, you're watching privately, but you're getting it in your own language if maybe some of that was unclear to you if your second language was English. So huge amount of relevance and huge power of those AI solutions for education. We also get the request that there's a lot of lecturers out there who, when they think about posting their lectures online afterwards, it's really valuable, if they have recorded them, to have a transcript of them. And you can automatically also take those subtitles and it will transcribe all of the lecture as well for you, and you can post them online. So again, we're seeing tremendous interest in this. One of the things I think, though, to think about as we look, and I'm going to flip this around a little bit for me too, is that one of the comments in this book is to not look at this future with uncritical eyes. So if we've learned anything from some of the past future or technological advances, is it can come with some very, very positive effects, but also with some challenges. And when we think about what will happen with artificial intelligence, as computers behave more like humans, what's the impact on that for jobs? What jobs will there be? What jobs will there be for real people? So will there be jobs that our kids can fill? Will they have the skills to fill those jobs? And what do we need to do now to really prepare for that? To really think about it, we can look to the past because we can learn a lot. This isn't the first real technological innovation. And this picture is a very famous intersection in New York. It's with the Flatiron Building in the center. It was taken around 1900s. And you can see from this, at that time, there was a lot of horses, there was a lot of trolleys, a lot of people walking. And it was a very poignant time in history because 2 decades later, a mere 2 decades later, and all of the horses are gone. And it's replaced by, yes, still some trolleys, but a lot of cars. And at the time, there was about 100,000 people it took to keep the horses moving, and a whole industry behind those horses within New York. So cleaning them, feeding them, etc. About a quarter of all agricultural output in the US was to support horse-based transport. And yet, within a short period of time, with the advent of cars, all of those jobs disappeared. And so with that, though, there was a lot of indirect effects. So with the advent of the car, we saw a lot of more innovation and new industries spin up. So we saw the credit consumer industry where people needed money. They needed more money than they had to buy a car. We also saw factory workers, so factories to produce cars. Mechanics and other jobs were created, and a whole indirect effect from this technological advance. Likewise, Microsoft, I guess, had a role to play in some of this as well, where in about the early 80s, with the advent of the PC in a lot of the offices around the world, and with certainly Word becoming more prevalent, typically you would have seen a room like this where anything that was read or needed to be read or consumed was typed up on a typewriter, typically by a lot of ladies or women. And given that today is International Women's Day, and in the spirit of that, I'm really glad that that innovation has meant that these jobs as well went away. But it opened up opportunities for lots more jobs. And so for many of you here who are working in IT, that was one of the byproducts. So with all of these personal computers going into offices, going into businesses, almost every small business and company needed an IT staff. And then as this progressed, we saw that in the 80s and the 90s, it became very apparent that not just IT staff needed to know about computers and needed to be able to use them, but everybody needed to be able to use them. And I think that is something, as we think about what is the future of technological advances and AI and cognitive services and some of the things that we've covered already, what impact will we have? It will indeed become a bit more mainstream. So how will technology transform today's jobs, and which ones will disappear? So when we think about call centers today, call centers in 10 years' time, how many people will be working in call centers? We don't know exactly, but it's fair to say that probably a lot less than there are now, because even now we see that artificial intelligence and computers are already handling some of that workload, and we will see that continue. The same thing will be relevant for people who drive people in cars. How many of those will still be employed in those jobs in 20 years' time? Probably a lot less than there are now. And so when we think about that, what will be the new jobs? So like the mechanics and like the factory workers and like all the spin-off industry that came when the horse lost his job, there'll be new jobs. And these jobs were not around 10 years ago, but what will be the jobs in the next 20 years that we will need to think about how we prepare for now, how we skill, and what we need to do to equip the next generation to be successful. Certainly technology skills, we'd all acknowledge, are going to become important. The investing in coding, and there's huge initiatives all around the world that are really investing in primary school and secondary school and making sure that we've got coding on the curriculum. And the UK has done leading work in this area with coding now part of your curriculum here. But also data science. Data science will become key. And you saw data science now as a new role, a data scientist. You might not think about Microsoft, for example, as a curriculum partner, but one of the things that when Microsoft looked at the big gap there was in data scientists around the world, and I've been reading a number of UK newspaper articles on this and how your top data scientists within institutions are being hired into industry, and some of them are kind of keeping foot almost in both camps, working in industry but also still working in some of the university sector in the UK. It's a huge global challenge to really fill that skills gap. And so one of the things that Microsoft did was work with data scientists, work with employers, and build an almost university caliber curriculum to address this gap. It was informed by industry, informed by the data scientists, and we made it available on edX, and this was about a year and a half ago. And within about the first 4 months of us launching that curriculum, there was about 1.2 million sign-ups. Or people registered for that course, and of that 1.2 million at that time, there was about 48,000 signed up for the certification piece of it. So we'll continue to see this trend continue to evolve as we see the skills gaps and the skills areas that we need to further invest in. We will see, you've seen this slide, it's overplayed. I'm sure all of you have seen the disruptions that there have been in industry and how some of these technological advances have disrupted traditional industries, but it's also disrupting the education sector, and we see this rise of alternatives, whether that's edX, whether that's Coursera. We will continue to see that trend continue within education. But with that, there's huge opportunity. So this sector, the post-secondary and higher education sector, has doubled over the last 25 years. And when we look forward and we look to the future, it will double again in a much shorter time frame. And so what does that mean for people in higher education in developed markets like the UK? the majority of that doubling, the majority of that growth will be in developing markets. So there's a huge opportunity to think about digital platforms and how you extend your reach into these developing markets to take advantage of that or extend your reach. And then I think it would be a mistake, so we talked a lot about technology skills, coding skills, data science skills. It would be a mistake to think about that the only skills that we needed to focus on were technology skills. When we look to the future, the humanities and social science will have a huge importance and will continue to grow and grow in importance. You've probably heard the phrase that, being human in the future will be a core differentiator for all of us in what jobs we look for. And that's true, but it also means that when we look at working with AI systems, we really will need to think about multidisciplinary approaches. So thinking about the people from humanities and the technology side really working together in partnership to inform, to train, to develop these AI systems. And I think one of the positive trends that I've seen, certainly in my role, visiting a lot of countries and a lot of institutions, is that we really are becoming more and more student-centric. And the power of these tools and artificial intelligence and cognitive services to really provide deep, personalized learning for students is tremendous. It'll also look at what are the learning spaces, so what are the learning environments that they work in. And a lot of institutions are looking at those smart buildings, smart environments, looking at the Internet of Things and how they leverage that when they think about building new campuses or even retrofitting new spaces that they already have. And Andy already spoke about LinkedIn Learning, and LinkedIn was one of the biggest acquisitions that we took on as a company. And one of the important roles that it will look at and address is how do we skill this workforce? How do we link this next workforce with jobs or students with jobs? And that's one of the things that LinkedIn and LinkedIn Learning will do very successfully, and it's one of the things that we're very excited about. And I know that if you've got time in between the next breaks, we do have a booth, and some of the folks from LinkedIn are here also. And I spoke about this earlier. This was, as opposed to doing the demo of it, where you would see the subtitles at the bottom, this just shows really how quick and how simple it is to use PowerPoint Translator for any of your PowerPoint sessions to make it much more inclusive. And I think that's something, in working for Microsoft, and certainly something that's core to Satya Nadella, our CEO, is making sure that intrinsically within all of our software that we're thinking about accessibility and we're thinking about really building inclusive software. And this is one of the things that I think really just at its core, as opposed to building separate solutions, separate technology for people with disabilities or learning difficulties, that this is built into the technologies. And if any of you want to see more of that or learn more about it, please come visit us as well at the stand in the afternoon, and we'll be more than happy to show it to you. There's many different languages that you can choose from to have be translated and have the subtitles running at the end on. And then finally, I guess I would close with this. When we look at this very same building, the Flatiron building, from the same vantage point taken today, we'll see that there are a lot more cars, a lot more people. But what's going to happen in another 20 years' time? I'm quite sure that it will be, maybe the air will be cleaner, there'll be a lot less pollution, maybe a bit less noise with more electric cars and driverless cars. But there will also be a lot of the people in this picture. What kind of jobs are they going to be going to? What kind of skills will they need to fill those jobs? And what do we as a sector need to do to ensure that they really have all the skills that they need to prosper? And the last thing I'm going to show before we close is a video on quantum. And so we've spoken a lot about future technologies, and hands up here, anybody who knows and is an expert on quantum computing? Yeah. No. You are great, because at the end of this, when I get questions, which I won't be able to answer on quantum computing, it's very exciting, and the possibilities as well, and the impact that it will have on some of the most challenging and most important questions that we'll face on the planet, it has the potential to address. And so I'm going to close on that, and I think then Andy and I will both attempt to answer any questions that you may have on anything that we've covered.
computing will enable us to solve problems that currently take longer than the lifetime of the universe in seconds, hours, or days.
We completely reconceive the space in which we do computation.
Quantum computing is like going from crawling to going to a different planet. It's different.
It's only natural that we would want to use the world's most powerful device to combat the world's most challenging problems.
We could attack global warming.
Security,
What are the boundaries of machine learning?
fighting diseases. The possibilities of quantum computers are endless. Microsoft has the best and the brightest working on this problem.
It's really happening. Progress is very fast. And we're building a quantum computer.
What the world wants to know is what happens when we turn the machine on.
What problems will be solvable with a computer that computes in a billion parallel universes at the same time?
Thank you. I guess we'll take some questions if you want to come up and join me, Andy.
Fantastic. My PowerPoint's never going to be the same again, I'm sure. Has anyone got any questions? We've got a little bit of time for our next session, so raise your hand, and we've got some microphones. Just down here at the front. No, we'll go left first then.
Hello. Yeah. Just one really about the whole who's driving the education technology, the academics or the IT? And is the IT going to be driving what the academics need, or do you see the education academics coming to the IT to ask for solutions? So where do you see the driver of that change in education?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, in my opinion, IT should always just support the learning, and it should support the academics. And so I hope that that's what we got across in here, that it absolutely should be support tools, and it should never be, you know, the car, even though that's going to become I was going to say the car driving the person. But it really is, you know, a support mechanism, and they should improve the teaching and learning. They should help improve the outcomes. They should help the teaching be more accessible, but ultimately it's the teacher, it's the academics, it's the faculty that will be driving the learning process.
Great.
Could I give
Yeah.
a sort of almost flip side to that? I think that's maybe the ideal, but I also think just by the very nature of working in technology, that sometimes the technologists are closer to the transformation. They see it first. They're using it in their own day-to-day work. And so sometimes they see things and the possibilities that academics maybe not necessarily have got a view on yet. So you're pretty much a partnership, no perfect answer, but I think partnership's a good word.
Excellent. Thank you. I think I had a question at the front here.
Yeah, it was sort of on the partnerships piece. You know, you're a global, maker of software. What about the work that other software companies are doing, like Amazon, Apple, Google? How do you try to even start to coordinate that? Because I think that would be enormously helpful for education, for what you're trying to do in terms of transforming people's lives, etc. How do you sit with that?
I think it's a good question. I think there is collaboration across our industries more and more now. And I think when you do bring the power of everyone together, you'll get a much better result at the end. I think you'll see that from the Microsoft perspective in becoming much more cross-platform. So Andy did his demo, a number of years ago at Microsoft. You would never have seen an iPhone in the hands of a Microsoft employee. But now, a lot of us have iPhones, and we use it with Office and Outlook, and we use a lot of our apps on that, and so you'll see a lot more kind of collaboration to make the end user experience a lot richer.
Okay, just at the front here.
We saw a video earlier about IT support saying, if you try switching it off and on again, which is often the case that does solve the problem. What happens in the future when we can't just switch things off and on again, when AI can't be restarted easily?
What was the problem? I just had that, the duplication disappeared from the screen as I was up there. I'm going, oh God, what a time for that to happen. When you can't switch it off and you can't switch it on. I think, so let's talk about AI specifically. Everyone's got their own view on this, so at a company level, we are working with Google, Amazon, Facebook, we are looking at the ethical side of this. I think some people are picking AI off the shelf. That's fine, no right or wrong. My personal view is that we have technology in Azure and Cognitive Services where you can run your own machine learning experiments. And so you control the profile that's being made of a student intervention. And I think that's really important, but I don't think you should stop there. I also think you need to involve the student. And ultimately it's their data. It's almost a democratization of the data as well. And it's about being transparent at every level. So we don't live in a world where you can't switch it off or on at the moment, but we do live in a world where education should be driving the conversation in AI and not necessarily leaving it to corporations to drive that agenda. I think you guys have a lot of expertise in there.
And if I just add on to that, I think it's a really important question and a really timely question when you think about data privacy, data security, and certainly a lot of the things that power artificial intelligence, for example, the translator, it gets smarter and smarter as you switch on for it to listen to your voice, listen to your accent. But you can choose, and I think the piece is information and transparency, as Andy said, to opt in or opt out of that. You may choose, I'm okay with it just being 95% accurate, and I choose not to have it be tracking my voice and my accent and capturing that information. And I think it's a responsibility on all of us to make sure that when you sign up and when you use some of these services that you truly do understand what's going to happen to your data.
Thank you. Any more questions? Last chance. At the front.
The quantum question, right? I'm going to defer to Andy on this.
No, I'm actually not going to go on to quantum. I'm going to go on to economics and productivity. So, you gave some examples there. You were showing the Flatiron building over a number of generations and how you've got more technology and so on and so forth. And then you showed sort of typewriters leading onto computers. But there is an argument, and it's an economic argument that's well understood, that actually for all of the innovation that we've seen in the technology centre, we haven't seen a great deal of additional productivity that's arisen out of that. And the good example is you had some very skilled typists that used to do typing, and now you have some very unskilled typists who still do typing, only they do it on computers with advanced software, which actually costs more money. So there is how do you see this developing in the future, specifically around AI, specifically around quantum computing, because there's going to be some of that in there, and are we ever going to get out of that productivity paradox that we seem to be in at the moment?
So, this is a great question. There's something that I see quite a lot, and I wonder if this resonates with you guys, because we just spoke about more technology coming, more advances, but are we seeing the gains? Typically, I see a lot of IT projects. I don't always see a lot of change management projects. I don't see full utilisation of the product suite in its current format. When I used to work for a small fruit company, we were selling lots of iPads. They were going out there. And what happened, particularly, you notice this more so in K-12 in schools, you really notice this. You've got one teacher, you've got 30 kids, and there's a pedagogical flow of how that works, where it's paper handouts and assessment happens that way. And then these iPads would go in, and what would happen is nothing would happen. You would have one teacher still managing 30 kids. And actually, in some ways, you got a lot more friction because sometimes the traffic could increase and it was becoming unmanageable. So I think it's okay to put systems out there and to switch services on, but I think we really need to pay just a bit more attention to that people change because we're putting new technology in against old processes in a lot of instances. And I think if we redefine the process, if we envision what it is we're really trying to achieve, I think we'll start to get that productivity again.
Great. Thank you so much. Your next session, everyone, is in 15 minutes' time. It's the University Showcases. Let's just thank Regina and Andy one last time.